So I was diagnosed with OCD, depression, and anxiety when I was 14 years old, and the mental health issues actually started long before that, and were still there long after that diagnosis. Now, I don't know what you've been through, mentally in your life, but I do know mental health pain and suffering. And apparently 50% of individuals worldwide develop at least one mental health disorder by the age of 75. This was some study where over 150,000 participants were included across 29 countries, so that's a shit ton of data. Now, this video isn't going to try to compare the different wounds or mental health problems, but it's going to try to show what's possible because of them. So I kind of want to discuss why my mental health struggles have become the greatest catalyst of change for me, and how at this point I'm grateful that I've had them, and how you can get there too. So I want to first start off by explaining a little bit about my childhood and my mental health issues, starting with when I was 5 years old. As like a lot of little kids, I was scared to go into the basement. For whatever reason though, when it was time to go to bed, I felt like I had to go downstairs and check that the water faucet was off. Now I know that's weird, but I just had this strong impulse to do that, and apparently that's associated with OCD, and who knew? I'll fast forward to an example of sleeping over when I was a little bit older. You go to a kid's house to spend the night and play video games, have fun, right? For whatever reason, it was time to go to bed. I would be so anxious. I would throw up in the toilet, call my parents, cry, and go home. Fast forward further to high school, homecoming or prom. You take the pictures before the dance. At the pictures, I would oftentimes throw up. I was just so anxious for this big new moment that seemed scary to me. Forward even further to college. I wanted to do pre-medicine. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I wasn't as good at the hard science classes as I thought I was, and I wasn't getting good grades. I had developed a depression. I was sleeping 12 hours a day and flunked out of school, and honestly developed a hatred to myself at the time. With all these different episodes, I say all that because after a while, you start to just think, this is who I am. This is me. This is a part of my identity. And you can have this kind of victim's mentality, or a fixed mindset is another way to describe it. And so there's this idea that this Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, has coined: a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Now, a fixed mindset is the belief that your intelligence, talent, personality, and even your mental health or emotional state are permanent. Whereas the growth mindset, on the other hand, is that with effort, time, and new tools, you can learn and change. And so when we have a victim mentality when it comes to our mental health, we live as if our pain is permanent. And if we switch to the growth mindset, pain is the catalyst, not a prison. And that's actually what Dweck's research has shown, that the growth mindset not only just affects, academic or any kind of goal you want to achieve, but from recovering from trauma and mental health. And then there's actually this related term that I found interesting called post-traumatic growth, PTG. And that refers to positive change that results from dealing with struggles with mental health and trauma. And studies have shown that people who experience PTG have increased appreciation for life, greater personal strength, I would agree, new spiritual perspectives, and a drive to help others. So I'd like to think firsthand that I have done that, but it wasn't always like that. So how did I go from having a fixed mindset to this growth mindset? Well, no surprise, there was actually another throwing up incident, and this was after college when I got my first grown-up job as a software developer, and I was so stressed out and didn't know how to cope with, having a new job, that I was using alcohol to cope. And one night I had like 2 tumblers, those big ass metal containers of gin, pretty much. And so of course, wicked hangover the next day. I was throwing up, eventually dry heaved and started throwing up blood. I tore my esophagus. And I didn't say it before, but I've had a lot of health anxiety as well. This just freaked me the hell out, and I realized I have to change. I can't keep living like this. I mean, how much longer am I just going to keep dealing with my own bullshit for years on end without any change? So I looked into meditation, and from that point on, I learned about so many different things and how important it is to do journaling and gratitude and deep breathing exercises and eating healthy and exercising, all this to get healthy. And I started feeling a lot better mentally. And then I realized this, that the whole time I just hadn't had the tools. I hadn't learned the mental health tools to deal with my mental health, and that I was actually never stuck So neither are you. Because even if you feel like you're stuck, doesn't mean you actually are. All it means is you've been in the same pattern for a while. So first thing to do is just choose to do something, even the smallest little thing to get to start to climb out, maybe download a meditation app or a gratitude journaling app, or start exercising. Pick one little thing that you know is good for you, and it can help your brain in a major way. And as I continued my mental health practice, as I call it, I started to see that I wasn't as anxious. I didn't have as many intrusive thoughts, and I wasn't thinking as negatively about myself. Like, my brain was literally changing. And you might be thinking, yeah, well, my brain's not going to change. Well, what if I told you that in the same way your brain started to feel worse? There's times when, your mental health can go down even further. In the same way, based on your habits, it can go better in the other direction, because there's something called neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire itself, forming new neural connections based on what you repeatedly think, feel, and do. So if you constantly dwell on the anxiety or negativity, your brain is going to strengthen those circuits, and the opposite is true. More positive habits, the brain will go in the other direction. So the key takeaway is you are not your wiring. Your wiring is simply a reflection of your habits, and of course your habits can change. That said, I will be honest, anytime I stop meditating as much or kind of go back to just living without taking care of my mental health, making that a priority, old patterns start to emerge. I start to go backwards, and so I start to feel not as good. And so my point is that my mental health pain has kind of become my teacher, and it holds me accountable and keeps me in line. And anytime I start to feel worse, I go back deep into my mental health practice and start to hone these skills. And so if you're kind of wondering what are some of these skills, just to give an example, the skill of clarity or awareness. I have learned to become aware of my thoughts, so when a thought happens, I know it's not personal. I don't have to believe every thought, and actually I can just now listen to a thought as if I'm listening to the radio and decide to completely not let it bother me. Or the ability to feel gratitude and to go through life appreciating these little moments that often will go unnoticed. These different tools that I've worked on have become like my medicine. And I don't just stop taking my medicine, when I'm feeling better. It's because of the medicine, the mental health practice, that I'm feeling better. So now, 6 years of taking my medicine, so to speak, I have emotional skills and habits and honestly spiritual beliefs that people who have never had to struggle may never learn. People who fortunately or unfortunately have never had to get that desperate. So now I'm grateful for them. My mental health struggles have, broken me open, and through that breaking, I've rebuilt something better because of it. And I would like to think that I'm stronger and more resilient to life's changes. And you can do this too. And if you're not at the place right now where you want to even do it for yourself, I understand, that's fine, but do it for the people around you. Because this can create a ripple effect that goes into your relationship, your children, your friends. And there's been studies in epigenetics and psychology that suggest that your trauma can be passed down biologically and behaviorally. But the same is true for healing. Your nervous system can model calm and compassion and resilience to everyone around you. So with great mental turmoil comes great responsibility. You have an opportunity here to turn your pain to not just healing of yourself, but for everyone else in your life. So I just want to leave on, I know you may be having a hard time, but hard times can create the strongest people. And strong people create good times, not just for yourselves, but for everyone around you. So I'm off my little soapbox. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, what you've been dealing with, if there's anything you agreed or disagreed with, and I will see you all next time.